I want to change gears a little bit here. We're still talking about China, but we had some news develop over this past week about the Panama Canal. Talk to me about the developments there.
Well, there are two developments since Marco Rubio went there on his first trip as Secretary of State. First of all, the Panamanian president, Molino, said that he would not renew his Belt and Road memorandum with China, and that he might even cancel the existing one. But the news this week is that BlackRock, the American financial asset manager, biggest in the world, by the way, is buying and taking over two Chinese port operations in the canal from CK Hutchison, which is the mega port operator around the world in Hong Kong, subject to Chinese rule. Those are the ports at Balboa on the Pacific side of the canal and at Cristobal on the Atlantic side. And these are the two port operations that have attracted a lot of attention because they could be easily turned into Chinese military bases when Beijing gives the order. So that is stunning news. It means that China is being muscled out of the canal zone, which is great because China still can block the canal, but it's losing its bases to do that. There are other Chinese operations in the canal zone. We need to get rid of those as well. But this is a very good sign. And it means that in other countries that are getting sick and tired of China, they'll be inspired to do the same thing. So with a little pressure from President Trump, we can do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the first country, at least in Latin America, to put the brakes on that Belt and Road Initiative and even voice the idea perhaps that they're just going to renege and back out.
Yeah, I think it is actually in Latin America for sure. We've had some problems with some of the other Chinese ports, but generally Beijing has been able to negotiate its way around them, most clearly in Sri Lanka. But this is really terrific news because this could be the beginning of not just a trend in Latin America, but around the world as well.
I think it's fascinating because President Trump, obviously made headlines by talking about the Panama Canal, right, and talking about how it's important to national security, how that we gave it to Panama, we didn't give it to China, and that he was taking it back, right, and that of course created a buzz, and a lot of people reacted in sort of the way they always do. They just saying, he's crazy. What is he talking about? That's ridiculous. And then, right, it's like he throws something at the wall, and the next thing you know, it generates movement over here that people weren't expecting. And like you said, we've got this consortium, led by BlackRock, to buy this back. CK Hutchison is a very interesting company, and you made a brief comment about it. Based out of Hong Kong, but subject to the CCP's control. To what degree? I mean, talk to me about that if you could.
Yeah. In the People's Republic, no entity, no person can ignore or disobey an order from the Communist Party. And that's also true of Hong Kong. Hong Kong was supposed to be autonomous, supposed to have one country, two systems for 50 years. But that ended in 2020 with China adopting the national security law for Hong Kong, which meant essentially full Chinese control of Hong Kong. And so, we had to assume from a national security point of view that CK Hutchison would close the port, the canal zone, if given an order to do that. And clearly the Chinese military and Chinese operatives, Ministry of State Security, were based in the canal zone, probably at those two port operations. So it's really important to get them back. And it's important to continue to eject China from the canal zone, because there's still a dozen ways that China can block that canal.
Right, and also just in terms of their surveillance capabilities, right? I mean, it's very good intel to understand ship movements. It's very good intel to understand cargo allocations and movements. So, I'm 100% on board with you. I think it's a brilliant move, and again, it's one of those fascinating moments where. Certainly, the political opposition, the Democrats in the U.S., looked at that and thought, that's insane. Why would he say we're taking it back? And then you have this move, and that it just seems to happen on a somewhat regular basis now. And so maybe at some point people will understand that, President Trump does have a sort of a method to what they perceive as madness. Now, we were talking about ships. Let's talk about shipbuilding, right? Because there's also been some news about that. I understand that the U.S. is going to make shipbuilding great again.
Yes, and President Trump has opened up an office of shipbuilding in the White House itself, which shows you that it is a priority. American shipbuilding has withered away. And there are a couple of things that President Trump has done. So, for instance, go back a week, the U.S. Trade Representative announced that it was imposing $1 million plus fees on Chinese-built ships and Chinese-owned ships that entered U.S. ports. That gives all sorts of people incentives to build ships elsewhere, and that's a good thing to get it out of the People's Republic of China. But it also incentives for American shipbuilding, and we need to do this not just for the Navy, which is woefully doesn't have the shipbuilding capacity anymore, but also just regular commercial ships, which are really important. It's the lifeblood of trade. So this is again great news.
Yeah, China, again, correct me if I'm wrong, and you always do, because, okay, maybe I'm wrong on occasion, but China is the leader globally in shipbuilding. Is that correct?
By far. They're well ahead of South Korea, which I think is in second place. But China makes something, and correct me if I'm wrong, something like over 50% of the world's ships.
Look at us. Look at us just correcting each other like this. It's just a back and forth. You're right. South Korea is in number 2 position. I read that the U.S. is down that list, is sort of, I think it's in 15th place in terms of shipbuilding, which is
that
astounding.
I don't know, Mike. But if you said 15th, I would say that's really high. Would have been my guess, even lower than that.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment, a really positive, nice, and kind comment. That would be appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily updates.